Hello and welcome to our third episode now of In Good Company. In our last episode, we looked at the impact that leaders have on our mental health. And we saw how leaders can make or break an organization and the people in it. Today, it's going to be a different take because leaders are also human and we're often judged, often criticized, scrutinized even, and it's not an easy task. So we're going to be looking at the inner work of leadership and what it takes to make it to the top and to maintain that position. I'm really delighted to have Dr. Jonathan Dingli with us. Jonathan is the head of advisory of KPMG Malta and has over 20 years, I think 24 years of experience in the field. And I'm looking at my notes because there are so many things. And I have an IFRS expert, ESG leader, holds a PhD, and is also currently the president of the Malta Institute of Accountants. Jonathan, thank you for taking the time to support our podcast. You are one of the initial guests, so it's really I'm really grateful that you came here.
Oh, thank you, Patrick, for inviting me to the podcast. I mean, likewise, I'm in good company. We go back many years.
Many years.
Thanks for having me.
Who would have told us that we would be here?
Indeed.
Many years later, 24 plus years later, as you said before.
Let's leave it there. Let's leave it at that. Let's not divulge more.
Exactly.
Information about the age, but great to be here. Thank you.
So let's jump right in,
Yep.
because we have a lot to cover, and I'm really curious, and I'm sure the audience will be curious to listen to your stories. Your profile is obviously quite impressive. Now you tend to be humble about it, but it is impressive, right? If we take away the PhD, the head of advisory, the lecturing role, the president at MIA, okay? If we strip all those things, what remains?
I think what remains is a father of three. I was going to say kids, but they're not really kids, anymore.
No.
So my eldest is turning 21.
Wow.
My second son has just turned 17, and my youngest will soon be turning 13. So,
Amazing.
So not really kids, but yeah,
Yes.
a father of three, a husband for a very patient wife, and started from very humble beginnings,
Yes.
so to speak. We're a working class family. My father worked really hard, so invested a lot in our education.
Yes.
And it's very thanks to him that I can be here today speaking about and
That they invested so
sharing
much.
some stories.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, outside of that, my personal life is quite the opposite of my professional life. So in my professional life, I'm very visible. In my personal life, I'm very invisible.
Wow.
So
Okay.
except from
So when you say invisible, can you tell us a bit about your personal life?
yeah, sure.
No.
So in my personal life, what I meant invisible is that you won't find me on the
On podcasts, for
on-
example.
or let's say I'm very active on the professional social
Yes,
media,
exactly.
but not on
But
the
not the
not on
private.
the other private.
I think you had a confession to make actually about social media, right? that you don't have.
I don't. I'm not on any social media platform. I'm not sure the producer will like that, but no. But I mean, my private life is
Yes.
is very quite the opposite of my professional life in the sense, I my hobbies. I love being at sea. I love the outdoors. I love walking. I used to do much more camping when
Wow.
the kids
Okay.
were younger. I have a small vineyard, so I'm also a
Okay.
a
Where's the wine? Where's the
winemaker. Well, I'm still taking care of the
Okay.
vines. They're just 2 years old, but I spend a lot of time, in my free time, on my boat or in the fields, doing
Wow.
that manual stuff.
That's really interesting because in the last episode, when we were talking about work and mental health, one of the things that came out, and in fact, I wanted to ask you about this anyway, is that like, how do you basically maintain your sanity when you are occupying such a high level of responsibility, multiple roles. And we did mention the importance of plugging into nature.
Mhm, mhm.
And it seems like, in your case, that is something that really applies. You know?
No, I think in my professional day
Mhm,
to day,
mhm.
it's very rare that you start something and you manage to, wrap it up
Wrap it up
nicely
on the day.
before you go home on the day. So I find myself, what gives me, mental sanity is
Mm,
doing
mm.
some jobs, which I can see from start to finish.
Ah,
So maybe
okay,
even
interesting.
during the
Okay.
week, even maybe cooking a meal. So being able to create something from scratch and then enjoying the end result and wrapping it.
Oh, nice.
But then even during the weekends and vacation and whatever public holidays, I get a lot hands on in touch with nature. I have a small field
And the dog?
which keeps me busy. I have a very naughty
Dog, who I
Labrador
met.
Retriever who you met, but he keeps me good company. He
Yes,
keeps me good
exactly.
company. So yeah, and also what I'm experimenting with lately since last summer
Mhm.
is also going offline completely. So
Okay.
I am a bit the
Okay,
laughing
so this is quite something coming from someone in your position. So, off the grid, you mean?
off the grid,
Off the grid.
and I am a bit the laughing stock. If some of my friends watch
Wow.
this podcast, they will see, they will tell me, you see, I'm right, because sometimes they send messages and I just don't look at my mobile for
Oh, wow.
in the
Okay.
weekends where I could actually forget where my mobile is during the
Okay, now
weekend.
I'm getting jealous. So
And
this
I
is
experimented even last year. We went on a whole week
okay.
sailing
So,
trip, and I decided I'm not going to use my phone
jeez.
except for
Okay.
booking marinas. So, and that helps a lot because it goes back, to like when we were young, Patrick.
Yes. Yes.
When we were young, we didn't have the pressure of reading, emails instantly and Teams and WhatsApp, and all
Yes.
those
Being constantly
messages
switched on and
constantly switched on. So that is
Yes.
also helping me to keep my mental sanity. So of course, giving the 100% plus during
Exactly.
your contact time. But I
Exactly.
think we all deserve to be a bit cut off.
You know what? I'm grateful you brought this up. If listeners and viewers take this from this podcast, I'm already happy because it shows that it is possible to create some balance and to create pockets where you're not necessarily plugged in, switched on. It is possible, even because let's face it, you're busy. I know you're busy all the time, right? But you still manage to create pockets of sanity where you can create a balance and refresh and replenish.
Yeah.
So that's really I'm a bit shamed because I find myself getting sucked into being plugged in all the time, and I think I'm going to take this as an important
Because
lesson
the
for
thing
me
is,
as well.
if your engine is overheating
Yes,
constantly,
absolutely.
you start losing efficiency. So
And burning out.
and burning out, and sooner or later,
And burning out.
I was at
Exactly.
risk of a burnout a few times, especially in my younger years before I learned how to keep this
Yes,
balance.
let's have a look at like your journey, because today the topic is the inner work of leadership, right? So we want to go a bit behind the scenes. So the way I see it, like people like yourself who are technical specialists to start with, right? So what attracted you? Okay, you always had the tendency to be a bit of a leader, even socially, and the center of the party, life of the party. So you always had that in you, but um, you're a technical expert. So we've even in the introduction, right? So an IFRS expert, ESG leader, lecturer at university, PhD. Can you talk a little bit about the transition to being a technical expert, very comfortable, very confident, like knowing your stuff, to having such a strong people leadership position, and a bit of maybe a bit about the journey of how you.
I have quite a personal story to
Yes,
share here. So my
absolutely. Yes,
journey
yes.
is, I started off in a technical,
Okay.
the technical role in audit, and then moved on and worked for a few years to set up the technical department
I see.
of
Okay.
a local association before moving back to where I am today. So I spent several years, 7 years, doing
Wow.
purely technical work, purely technical.
So that was still hands-on at that point.
Very,
not,
very
not,
hands-on.
Okay.
So I went back to the
Mhm.
current firm now 14 years ago. But before then, I was working, a technical officer and the technical director eventually of the Accountancy
Okay.
Association. So and you do end up without even knowing,
Mhm.
in lecturing mode all the time.
Telling mode.
All the telling
Telling
mode,
mode. Telling. Yeah.
all the time. So when I moved back to a professional services firm,
Mhm.
to where I work today, I remember going through some coaching sessions.
Okay.
Coaching. I'm a firm believer in coaching, and I remember being assessed on some what we call behavioral capabilities.
Okay.
So making an impact, curiosity,
Yes. Yeah.
innovation,
Behavioral competencies.
behavior
Yes.
competencies. And I remember receiving the report after that 2-day boot camp. And of the 6 behavioral competencies, I was fared like 3 on average and 3 below
Oh,
average.
wow.
And I
Okay.
said, okay, well,
Okay.
they must be wrong. I was working, in a technical mode. They
Okay.
must be wrong.
Okay.
But then
Yes.
you
Yes.
realize that to make
Mm.
it to leadership, I remember them sharing some tips with me,
Mhm.
which initially I was a bit, I took them a bit not in the right spirit. But then I realized, once you brush off the dirt, I realized that those were valid tips to change. And the making an impact, the slowing down, the asking more questions,
The listening.
not assuming,
Not assuming.
So you, of course,
Yes.
you are
Yes.
very fair. But there's quite a bridge to cross from a technical role
To a leadership.
to a leadership role, whether you're of course leading staff and
Exactly.
colleagues, and also being in front of in clients, having conversations. I remember those tips very, very, very fondly. So slow down, don't assume, ask more questions, validate every now
Interesting.
and then. When I was occupying a technical role,
Mhm.
it was just I was
It's just you and
it's just
the
lecturing, and at times
Yeah.
I still have to work on that, because at times I have a mentor at the office who tells me constantly, listen, in that meeting, your the lecturer
Wow.
in you came out. So just be aware of that.
Yes.
At times you
Yes.
need that technical whatever, but
Absolutely.
very often you have
Absolutely.
to. And again, I'm over talking. So
No. You really aren't. It's much easier like that than us having to become a dentist and pull out teeth. Okay, but do you ever feel that because of the leadership role, you start losing a bit of uh, knowledge, perhaps, or expertise in the technical? Does that ever? I've heard a number of people telling me, like, what attracted me to the role was becoming a super expert in this role. Now I'm in a leadership role, and my people are actually, in some areas, more knowledgeable than me.
and
How-
I am at that stage now.
You are at that
I am at
stage.
that stage now,
Okay.
and I actually I consider it one of my key success factors, that the people I nurtured for many years, most
Interesting.
of them
Okay.
since the days at university, are now technically as strong or even stronger than me, and there's nothing
Wow.
wrong in that.
Okay.
What I add in terms of value, the value I bring is the experience,
The experience.
because then I would have
The practice wisdom.
because I would have applied the technical
Yes.
requirements in different scenarios, and it takes time to build that that wisdom, which you won't find in
And
textbooks,
that's
but you
exactly it comes from experience. But I still come across leaders in your position who feel threatened and don't actually encourage people to become as good as them or even better. So I don't know how you feel about
No,
that, because I see it like this is quite an exception.
my word of advice, and I honestly believe this. So I'm not bluffing or whatever,
No,
or being
So just-
cheesy or giving you what you're after, but and the people in my team can relate and vouch for that. You are as strong as the people around you. Okay, if you want to have a one person show, well then you have that limiting factor, because it all relies on you. You know, you
And it
can't,
all
you can't grow.
revolves around
It all
you.
revolves around you. Then you tend to see, and also, you know, that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction of seeing people
Grow
grow.
and yeah.
And this is what I always say. We are a professional services firm. It's not a family business. So it's not a matter that my daughter or my son will eventually take over the leadership of the firm. It doesn't happen that way.
No.
So the people who will take over the leadership of the firm are the people that we develop now.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Okay, let me be a bit of a pain. What behaviors bother you the most? So when you so you're taking on this role, you try to be a mentor and nurture people. Are there attitudes or behaviors that really piss you off?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There are. I think.
It's the reality of
there-
leadership, no? That sometimes you
no,
have to deal with that.
what bothers me is that at times you do end up in a room where someone's ego is bigger than the
Yes.
room itself, to the extent that, you know, won't let anyone else speak and share his or her views, and that often leads to the second behavior, which annoys me, which is arrogance. Okay. So probably those would be the two behaviors that annoy me most.
They push your buttons.
They push my
right?
buttons. Ego and arrogance and lack of respect to others. Some people who just want to hear their voice
But exactly,
constantly.
but unfortunately, very often, sometimes the loudest person in the room gets their way. Like, how do you deal with something like that? Because we see this all the time, you know. They bluff, they dominate, they put on this facade, and then they get their way. So I'm asking you some tough questions here.
Well. How do I deal with it? I think it's a matter of be respectful, so calming down that individual first, and you know.
So you maintain
we
the
did-
respect.
No, we did, even, you know, during our earlier discussions, during, you know, our coaching
Yes,
sessions.
yes.
We were experimenting a bit on, you know, how to slow down the conversation, how to first get that person to calm down and be open to other people's views, right? But again, I don't think it's a formula that would work in
With every
all,
situation.
with every situation.
Exactly.
But I think if your reaction is, or my reaction is, raising the voice equal to that person, then it will just end up
Exactly.
in chaos rather
Collision.
than collision. So yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about hard lessons, right? Let's start.
Can I just go back
yes,
to your,
of course,
to your
of course.
previous question?
Absolutely.
On the other hand,
On the other hand,
and I've had the privilege, you know, of working with some outstanding individuals who, despite being so brilliant and technical and, you know, and exceptional leaders, they were at the same time humble, and you know, when you have that balance, I find that, you know, that humbleness in that person coupled with that person's brilliance, you know,
Yes.
that really helps that person to shine. So rather, you know, I went back to the question because you were asking,
Yes.
how would you deal with a person that raises the voice and try to make the argument by bullying himself or herself into a conversation, as opposed to people that, you know, despite their brilliance, are
They
humble
maintain
and
their
they're always open to hear other people's views. So
Okay,
those
thank
are-
you.
it's
No,
the
no.
complete
That's
opposite.
really interesting. And what about vulnerability? So historically and traditionally, leaders were expected to be, you know, stiff upper lip, always knowing what they want to say, always knowing what they want to do, having all the answers, never showing emotion. They actually used to make fun of people who are emotional, like you're being emotional, like it's a bad thing. And now this is changing. Over the years, it's changing. So over the years, humility is one of the characteristics in leadership that is being promoted, right? And not false humility. So confident humility, right? So confident in your abilities, but at the same time, you're maintaining that element of being humble. The other one is vulnerability. So traditionally, leadership is still male dominated. So if you look at most organizations, okay, even those who have a good balance between male and female employees, the further up you go, right? So when you start going into senior management, exco partners, you start seeing an imbalance. And even now, in this day and age, you find that there's typically there's a male dominance. And research shows as well that one of the biggest issues that we have as men is to be vulnerable and not feel that we're being weak because we're being vulnerable. Jonathan, as head of advisory, how do you manage this vulnerability issue, and to what extent? How much do you show? How much do you not show?
I think there's two sides to this. So
Yes.
I think on one hand you have to be in control of your emotions too. So
Okay.
so if there's a crisis, you can't. You have to be the one that
You can't freak out.
you have to be the one that you can't freak out, and you have to be the one that calms down the situation and starts floating solutions. On the other hand, a leader is so busy and that if you have to put on a mask and act to be the person you are not constantly, that won't work either. So on the other hand, you have to have authenticity.
Because people will see through you.
They will see
to
through
some
you.
extent.
And in my case, I spend most of my time at the office with people who are, from their mid-20s to late 30s, whether it's colleagues, whether it's students who are in their early 20s, actually. So those are the people I spend most
So it's a
time with.
youngish
It's
cohort.
a youngish cohort. It's a youngish cohort. And they are still, learning through the ropes, and and they feel vulnerable, and they have to be. They have all the right to feel vulnerable because we work, in a pretty complex area. So it does get a bit tense. So I feel you also have to be somewhat vulnerable to empathize with them.
Yes.
Because if they see their leader as, someone who is, I don't know, what am I looking for?
Always calm, cool, and composed.
No, that's great. Always cool, calm, and composed. Well,
But you can't be all the time like that.
Can't.
It's fake,
Yes,
no? You can't
it's-
be.
it's-
You have bad days. Do you have
do.
bad days?
Yes.
Yes, you have bad
I
days.
do.
Okay.
I do.
What happens on your bad days?
Well,
Full
because
disclosure.
No. And the team will realize when,
They realize,
when
okay.
You've had a bad start, or even worse, you had a problem which perhaps kept you a bit awake at night,
Exactly.
and they would realize that. I myself, rather than trying to avoid it, I call it out. Okay, so with my closest, team members, I say, guys, today, please be a bit patient with me. I'm not at my best. Okay, so I do call it out, and and we all have
That
those
is-
bad days, right? We all have,
Yes, absolutely.
either the kids waking up late and not making the school
Exactly.
transport.
Exactly.
So very often are these tiny things, or traffic, or the car battery. And I just call it out in those cases, and I feel people will understand, and rather than seeing you as a mediocre leader or whatever, they will see the human aspect in
Exactly.
you, and they will actually offer to help.
So I think
So that is my
that's
personal
yes,
experience.
and I totally agree. It's not probably not not as common as we may think that it's okay to tell your, like, for example, Simon Sinek mentions this a lot. It's okay to tell people, look, I'm struggling, I'm having a tough week, I'm having a hard day. I have some issues, health issues at home, and I'm worried. And it doesn't mean that you're crumbling and collapsing in front of your team and you have no control. And it actually, you're modeling behavior where you can still be functional even though not everything is going well in your life. So I think that's something really important.
But what I meant earlier, despite that, you still try to keep your cool. In the sense, you don't
Exactly.
lose,
So you don't
lose
you
control.
try
of it.
not to completely
But-
lose it.
But
Yes,
but
yes.
yeah, there would be days when it's harder to keep that balance and focus, and that's when I just address, call it out immediately with my team, guys. Today has been a bit.
Yes, amazing. Okay, so I'm going to take just something that you mentioned before, because okay, probably this is coming from a place of jealousy, but you mentioned that they're quite young. Sore point, right?
It depends. It depends what you're
Very
going to
sore
say.
point.
It depends what you're going to say next.
Okay, so a lot of people talk about young workers as being snowflakes, entitled, not resilient, can't take stress. I'd like to know your honest opinion about this. Like when you look at the younger workforce, right? So you're not that young.
No, I'm not.
I say with a lot of.
I'm not as old as you are, but I'm not.
Thank you. Remind me. No, but joking apart, how do you see this in terms of are they snowflakes? Are they not resilient? Are they people who just can't handle any pressure? So
No, I wouldn't. I
okay.
wouldn't make that generic statement. I think the way we recognize, the younger, I don't know what generation would that be, but the way we recognize the younger people's,
It's mostly aimed at Gen Zs.
Gen Zs.
Millennials were more labeled, because these are labels, as entitled, but hardworking. Now Gen Zs are entitled. This is like, again, the controversies there, right? Entitled but not hardworking, so they want to become managers overnight. For example,
that I would not agree with.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and I did say earlier that most people I work with are in their mid-20s to late 30s.
So that's you're catching that
spot on.
cohort. Yes.
And I think no one, despite the age, people still want to take pride in what they do, still want to have a sense of purpose, still want, to be motivated, still need something to get them out of bed in the morning. So I wouldn't agree that they're not willing to work hard, or I wouldn't say that they're not resilient, because I have many stories to share. Well,
That's it.
Of people who were, much younger than me, and still when we had to work long hours, when we had to, really sit down together and find solutions.
So they are
They were there.
tough challenges too.
Yes, because let's face it, no one wants to come across, like a stupid or an idiot or whatever. So they are willing to put in that effort. What I find a bit different from what the way we grew up is, the recognition part of it. So they need instant feedback.
Okay.
Okay. And also because technology, they grew up in an era of technology.
So the feedback
So
can
the feedback
come.
and how many likes you have and how many followers and so on. So I do recognize that you have to give more regular feedback.
Okay.
And also they expect to have more open conversations with their leaders. When I was growing up, when I was in my mid-20s, I wouldn't dream of having access to the partner, whenever
True.
or
True.
wherever.
That's so
But
true.
They feel that need. But to be honest, I do empathize a bit with them, because they are under the constant spotlight.
Of course.
Constantly under the
Yes.
spotlight. Because of that, the way they grew up with that instant feedback.
Yes, and even technology in itself exposes you, because
And
you have monitoring.
That's what I mean by spotlight. It exposes you,
Yes.
and it also speeds up things, makes things go much faster.
True. So the instant gratification.
I think it comes from there.
Yes, but what I'm noticing is that you adapt your leadership style. We're coming to that,
Yes.
because I want to ask you a bit about your leadership philosophy. But let's let's move to a bit of a nicer subject for now.
Even at home,
for
by the
now,
way, I adapt my
that's
leadership
it, because
style
you
at
have
home.
you
Because
have
I have
exactly
Gen Zs at home. So
exactly
the way I interact with my kids is not the same way that my father interacted
exactly. So
with
in
me.
fact, we are calling it more of a coach approach. So they seeing you as not necessarily the partner or the boss, but a coach who is accompanying them, and they are learning from you, you are learning from them, and there's this kind of the hierarchical mentality is
And I think you mentioned Simon Sinek earlier.
yes, yes,
He does go into that. I think when he speaks about start with the why.
yeah,
So
exactly.
why
That's
would people follow you? It's not because of the
mhm,
money they make, because they could be making that same money elsewhere, but it's because they believe in you and
exactly.
so you know
And
which part
coming
I'm
to
referring to.
that, I want to talk a little bit about inspirations. So, if you had to think a little bit about people who inspired you and who you could look up to and say, wow, that's someone that not copy, but emulate to some extent, and say, like, I really admired. Did you have people like that in your life?
I had several I had several
Okay.
I think the first person who I learned a lot from in terms of a role model and values is probably my father.
Mm.
Um, um, I mean, he taught me, that respect and, and
Yes.
and perseverance first and foremost. My father used to work really hard, so long hours. So I learned that perseverance,
Mhm.
and I learned, that life is far from winning a lottery. You really have to
You
put
have to
in
work
the
for
effort
it.
and work for it
Exactly.
to be rewarded. Um, I don't agree with all his teachings because we did have this conversation once
Yes.
that he always told me, to lie low and not to seek, higher positions because the
The further
downfall,
up you go, the harder
you
you
remember,
fall down,
the harder you
right?
fall. But other than that, I think he taught me
Yeah.
that every individual has a role, every individual
Mhm.
deserves respect. And at the same time, no individual is indispensable. So
That's so interesting. That's
it's
very
quite
interesting.
contradictory that
Hmm.
there's a role for everyone, but the world will still go on
So
without.
everyone is of value, but no one is indispensable,
No one is
right?
indispensable.
So
That's true.
so
That's a perfect way.
mm.
And then eventually, of course, you start learning from teachers like you. Can we say you were one of my
Could say
teachers
that.
at secondary school?
It
Um,
just shows how old I am, but it's okay.
but our
No, no,
paths
no, I'm
crossed
joking.
many years later
Exactly,
eventually.
exactly.
But I also had the privilege, as I mentioned earlier, of
Mhm.
working with some brilliant people. During my tenure at the institute, with past presidents, even at
Yeah, of course, of
KPMG,
course.
some brilliant people who nevertheless were humble, and I think I don't know if I'm making this point clear. Their humility allows their brightness to spark, to shine even more,
Wow.
if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
It's quite contradictory as well, and those
Yeah.
people have inspired me, and I learned a lot from the conversations that I had.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think of course, reading books and whatever does give you
Yeah.
that knowledge and intel, but it's after you engage with these people that you learn more about leadership traits and attributes and behaviors that inspired me. One
So
person in
yeah, okay,
particular.
yeah, it's good. You can name drop this.
Well, can I well,
No,
I
not it's not name
he
dropping. It's
he
mentioning.
no, one person in particular was actually made two big moves in
Sure.
my career. All right, so when leaving the firm to go, into uh, to start working for the institute, and when leaving the institute to go back into a firm,
Okay.
and on both occasions, the same person was
Oh,
there.
a constant.
And of
So
course, in both
wow. Okay.
in both moves, he was the senior partner of the firm at the time.
Okay.
So the top position within the firm, and I if I recall, he never gave sort of advice, but through his
Mm,
questioning,
mm.
he made me realize what are the best courses of action for me
Wow. Okay.
to take. So yeah, I'm very grateful to this person. And
Which again, it does point towards a crisis that I see, because many people actually say we don't have role models. We struggle to have people who can respect, admire, and emulate, because very often this group of people we're talking about don't feel understood. So I think the fact that you make the effort as a leader, and even as a very senior leader, to adapt. I hate saying going down to their level, because that assumes that you're going
There's
down their level,
different
but it's
evidence.
adapting.
I know what you mean.
Adapting to the values, adapting to the mentality, to the way they see work, they see life. And what you're saying is that it is possible to bring out the best in people, and it is possible to have people work hard and be invested in what they do. And that sounds very, very nice, and I admire you for that. But I'd like to hear a bit about some potential failures, or some, without
No.
oversharing. But um, what's a hard leadership lesson that you had to learn as you were journeying through the inner work of becoming a leader?
No, great. This is a great question.
Okay, good.
One of those.
You can hate me
one of
after.
those- No. And no, I had the opportunity. I was on a panel recently, and I was asked the same question, different, on the regrets and whatever. And I do remember one instance in particular. So it was COVID. I mean, by nature, I'm very much of a sociable person. I love to be around people. So when overnight we had to leave the office and start working, from home, that was very hard for me.
Okay,
During
okay.
COVID. And I remember, because of course, not the ideal, but soon after, a couple of weeks after we started working from home, we had our what we call open PDs, the performance reviews,
Okay,
the interim
okay.
performance reviews. And I unfortunately, I was, of course, vulnerable, like
Because
probably
yeah,
everyone
it
else,
was
because you uprooted me from my
course.
natural, and
no, it was a
I
huge,
was
huge
forced.
disruption.
It was
Massive disruption.
and I was forced sort of to be away from my team. I probably lost my cool
Okay.
at the time, and I remember in one of those interim reviews, I was lacking the eye contact, the body language, and whatever. I was also lacking probably composure, and I ended up losing a very valid person whom I
I
had
see.
been building
Okay.
for 5-6 years at the time,
Wow.
who
Okay.
I saw as one of my key managers down the line, and I lost that person simply because the way I gave feedback on some points
Wow.
that really needed improvement, but I was not that considerate. My emotional intelligence, okay, that's I think the key
Okay.
word, the key term I was looking for. My emotional intelligence was rock bottom, and I ended up losing that person because of the way I communicated and addressed the situation. So there were a couple of points that really needed improvement. But let's face it, we all need improvement. It's the way you communicate it. So I think that is a lesson learned, which I'd rather not have gone through.
Okay, but I'm going to push you a bit more on this. So, okay, so what would you have done differently, specifically? So
Today,
Mhm.
or today,
today,
post,
or
after the event, what I would have done differently. I mean, it was we had a limitation that these interim reviews had to be done online. Okay, so probably today we are more used to working online. What I would have done differently is, rather than jumping straight into the weaknesses and what needs to be addressed, is more asking questions around it. So arguably there are these couple of points. What is your thought? Do you see areas, or do you see ways of how you could be doing those things differently?
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So more
Approaching it with
approaching
more
it with more
tact probably,
Tact
and
and more emotional and
focusing more, mhm, like seek to understand
Yeah.
first
I had my
before.
mindset. I was not making, that eye contact and the body language that a person transmits across the table, and I just, got carried away with my, pressure, because it was a horrible time for me, COVID and the working from home, and
Some
it was not.
some
It was a very
yeah,
hard patch.
for some people it was harder than others. So I joke about it a bit because I say it is the first time when introverts had an advantage because they could handle it better than us.
And they still do.
Exactly, and they still do when necessary. John, I'm going to jump into something that's again in leadership is if you look around the country, if you look around the world, I think we have a crisis of values in terms of non-negotiable principles that we uphold, and I think we get a lot of messages that everything goes, that greed drives and power drives leadership, and unfortunately, you can disagree with me, but what I see is more and more people subscribing to that, right? That it's okay to bulldoze your way through, it's okay to pursue power and greed at all costs. And this is where I don't mind sounding old fashioned because I think it's important that we see leadership as a responsibility. I'd like your view on this. Like, two things I'd like from you actually. First, if you can share some of your core values as a leader, but then also a bit about your leadership philosophy of how those values actually translate into your leadership behaviors. So it's listen, you can take a couple of seconds to think about an
No,
answer.
I think the first the first core value that I would say is non-negotiable is integrity.
Okay.
Okay, and integrity in the sense even when no one is looking. Okay,
Off stage.
off stage, and I always, in fact, I must be on the record in one of my speeches as president,
Really?
going through this point. Be mindful of the first time effect. So what do I mean? The
Can you
first time effect.
can you elaborate a bit on this? The first
So
time effect.
the first
Okay.
time effect. Well, probably by time I will find a better term to define it.
It's okay. It sounds good.
But be mindful or steer away from doing something that dodgy the first time round. And so what I say is, we want to onboard a dubious client, if you want to cheat, if you want to evade taxes, if you want to do unethical stuff, the first time is the hardest. So that's why I always advise,
Wow,
steer
okay,
away and be mindful of the first time, because if you do it once, then the second, third,
It
and
gets easier.
It gets easier and easier. So just be super
Okay.
aware and
That's
try be mindful that if you do something dodgy once, then the
It's going
second
to get
time onwards,
easier.
it's going to get easier. So
Mhm.
and I remember once a client
Wow.
telling me, John, you either sleep well or you eat well.
Oh, oh my God. Okay.
And that is that stuck. And I think in my philosophy, I decide to sleep well first and foremost. Okay?
Yes.
I don't think you need to starve
No,
to
exactly.
sleep well,
Exactly. But
but
yes.
taking decisions, and conscious decisions, ethical decisions,
And
that first and
with
foremost allow you to
integrity.
sleep well with integrity, and even
Mhm.
have a decent return and whatever. I think my second core value would be courage.
Okay.
I do have something at the back of my mind about what you said earlier about leadership equals power. I don't agree with that. But
Go for it. Go for it.
We'll get back to it. But courage. So courage means
Yes.
be brave. And I read a book. We can cite a book here.
Yes, of course.
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and I read it a few times. And I remember, and the message that is
I
You knew I was.
I
You
know
knew I
because
would.
you had mentioned it, and I got it with me today because
There it.
I know you like that book. I spilled some water on it just before I came, so it gives it that classical
This is probably the first edition,
wavy look.
most probably.
It's a
Well,
1988.
wow. Okay.
So
So the key message,
so
the
yeah.
key message in this book, Patrick, is to listen to your inner heart. And then there's another book by Paulo Coelho, which is The Pilgrimage,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
how he listens to the inner voice. But listen to the inner voice, because if you stop listening to your inner voice, eventually it will stop talking to you.
Okay.
And what I mean by courage, be brave is, and it happened to me a few times, that you are presented with an opportunity, which, at that point in time in your life, you might not see clearly where that opportunity will take you. Nevertheless, if your inner voice, tells you to go for it, take the plunge and
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and
It's like
go for
to
it.
follow that.
And this is where I was fortunate enough to have the mentorship I mentioned
Exactly.
earlier
Exactly.
of the now retired senior partner,
Mm-hmm.
was guiding me and helping me to
To
substantiate that
yeah.
inner voice. So I tell even my students and my colleagues at the office, be uncomfortable, stretch yourselves,
Have the courage
have the courage to take
to do the right
to
thing.
dive a bit
And yeah.
into the dark, but doing the right thing.
Mhm.
Eventually, you'd hope that when you look back, you connect the dots, and the shape that emerges from after connecting the dots is a shape which you like.
Exactly.
In any
Exactly.
case, there's always
Yeah.
room
No.
for
No.
changing direction.
Exactly. Exactly. John, I honestly, listening to you is a breath of fresh air. It restores my faith in humanity, but I also have at the back of my mind people saying, "Yeah, right. This is all as if, like, in your opinion, does this approach really make you successful? Like, can it work? Like, genuinely, I'm saying, in today's world.
It has worked for me at least. Now, can it work in all circumstances? Can it work in all organizations? I would hope so. But it has definitely worked for me. And I was going to go back to your earlier point. Leadership is a responsibility.
Yeah, it's important.
In the
It is.
sense, you did mention greed, and that is probably our worst enemy nowadays. Um, but you don't find greed just sitting within the leadership space, right? So shareholder value and entrepreneurs and whatever. So I'm not sort of defending the leadership from that
No,
greed,
but it doesn't just sit there.
but
also. It's like, yeah.
it doesn't just sit with leaders. And I think I find myself at least, my role as leader is to bridge
Okay.
the and giving people a sense of purpose, to align, to subscribe to the organization's vision and mission. Now, of course, in my case, as I said earlier, I don't work in a family business, so I will have to
Exactly.
hand over the baton to
Yes.
someone
Yes.
else eventually. So my role and my responsibility is to develop those people. So,
Yeah.
same in my lecturing role. My role, my responsibility is
Yes, and that's even more that
to develop
exactly. That's
people
because there you
in-
have a direct educational role.
exactly.
Um,
So it does work in my case, because also my role requires me to develop the people around me, for succession and for
So you still believe in because honestly, you look around you and it's very easy to start saying, the people who make it are the people who, bluff their way through, cheat their way through, bulldoze their way through, and it's easy to become cynical, I think, about this. Like, you look at, the world of politics, the global situation at the moment. Um, so what you're saying is you still endorse this philosophy,
yes.
even though it's not always easy, right?
it's not always easy. Well, I'm not suggesting it is easy, but I think the way you are formed as a person and your values, or rather, let me rephrase. If your values, which you mentioned earlier, integrity, authenticity, courage, are really, within your inner self, it is not as hard as you think.
No, because it kind of flows out of you.
It does.
Right?
It does.
In fact, something you mentioned before, which struck me, was this what did you call it? The first time.
The first time effect.
The first time effect.
We have to find a
Because-
better term
No,
to
no, it's
define
fine.
that.
No, because there's also, I think there's also the fact that yes, it becomes easier, but then people also tend to become reckless, which means that it's more likely that they make mistakes and get caught, and then they're in trouble. So although it's not a very honorable reason for sticking to doing things ethically and legally, but there's also
There's
a sense of
consequences. There's
personal
consequences.
protecting yourself from
Of course.
losing reputation, losing credibility, and being, and possibly in your area, especially it's so highly regulated, possibly ending up even in trouble with the law. So
Yep.
there are serious consequences to that, right? Interesting. Okay. Is there something as a leader that you find that most people disagree with you on, that you find that you're swimming against the current in your
Most
view?
people, other leaders, you mean?
Other
or
leaders, other leaders. Is there something that you find yourself swimming against the current because most people tell you, no, John, you're being.
Nothing really comes to mind. I mean, perhaps let me think a bit out loud here. So I mean, the leadership role is pretty lonely. It's quite lonely at the top.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
Now I did say earlier that when I'm having a rough day or whatever, I do call it out and I ask for my
Yeah.
colleagues' understanding, but you can't do that all the
Too
time.
much.
Too much, and you can't.
There's a limit.
And you can't do that, when you have some sensitive, decisions or circumstances to go through. And I think there is a consensus, at least with the leaders I work with, that yes, it does get pretty lonely, and
Okay.
it helps
Yes.
because when you are at the top, you either
Yeah.
seek advice laterally or with at other levels, but
Yeah.
it's not always easy.
No,
To-
no,
to-
no,
to-
no.
to
And there's the
to go there.
tendency that people will tell you what you want to hear because
Yes.
they want to suck up to you, basically. So
But in terms of
do you get that sometimes, that you notice that people are
yes, you do.
best
you do.
behavior?
But then you call it out.
You
and
call
then
it out.
Then you say, you don't need, that doesn't work
Okay.
with me. But in terms of swimming against the current, I don't know. Can I ask that question back to you? Did you have any?
Yes,
Any
all the time.
stories to
All
share?
the time.
Such
all
as?
the time.
Maybe
I'm
that's-
called idealistic.
You are called idealistic,
Naive
okay.
sometimes because I keep
I do
believing
get that.
in
Okay.
the.
Now I
You get that?
understand your question. I understand your question.
So for example, what's your opinion about trust? How much to trust other people, especially people in power like yourself? Because let's face it, leadership, you said leadership isn't power, but it is a form of power. I mean,
Yeah, it is a
Huh?
form of power
I mean,
which comes with
can-
huge
can-
responsibility.
but you can't deny that you don't have power.
And of course you have to exercise that power for the common good. So for
Sorry, I meant you can't deny that you have power, because if you deny that you don't have power, it just means you don't have power.
No,
you can't
no.
deny that you have power.
I understood your question, and of course, yes. I mean, every leader has the vested power, as I said, which comes with great responsibility, because
Yes.
you have to exercise that power for the common good, for proper succession, for, of course, shareholder value, and so on and so forth. But I generally tend or rather by default, a person to me is trustworthy.
Okay.
So you have to prove me wrong. So I'm not
Yeah.
skeptical. I'm not skeptical.
Okay.
By default.
By default.
So
Okay.
I start a conversation. I start a relationship, hoping and almost believing
Based on
that
trust.
that person is trustworthy. But then there is a bit of a fine line. So once you prove me wrong, then
And that line is crossed.
once that line is crossed, then I
Mhm.
it's hard for me to go to take that person back into my inner circle.
But
of
you do
trust. But I
hear.
was very lucky. I don't know. Maybe I was very lucky in life that
Yeah.
I was surrounded, barring a few
Mhm.
exceptions, I was surrounded by very
Yeah.
good people, trustworthy people.
But you do get this thing, like you trust too much, or
I do,
you
I do.
yeah.
And
It's a.
when I ask you for examples on purpose, when
Uh-huh.
I do sometimes get that some leaders would call me naive, or on the other hand, I would tell other leaders, maybe you're reading too much between the lines, and
Yeah.
that's where I get the other leaders and calling me naive or
There is a tendency for people who see power as very personal, and that they want to hold on to it, and they see it as something that they're entitled to get very paranoid then, and so therefore they will actually trust less. So if your approach is that my leadership position is also there to serve and develop others and bring people to my level and beyond, you tend to be less clingy to that
yes, and
power,
more open
and
more
feel
open.
like start getting paranoid that people are conspiring against you, and all that. Talking about power, when you have power, you also have authority, and you exercise authority, right? So what's your take on that? Like, how do you actually exercise authority as a leader with so much power?
Okay, I'll get to that, but I think first we have to go back. I asked you a question earlier, a difficult question which you tried to avoid.
I thought I got away with it, but apparently I didn't. Okay.
So on
Can you what?
swimming against the current. So
Swimming
I
upstream.
think your question was
Okay.
swimming upstream, and do you often get other leaders to maybe criticize or not subscribe? So what is your take? Of course, you are a leader yourself, but you've coached many leaders. So I'm here getting some free advice
Okay.
from you. So when you get that sort of, I did say I might be called naive, or you're too good, or on the other hand, I do say you're reading too much between the
Too
lines,
much
but
between
that's
the
my
lines.
experience.
Yes.
What about your experience also coaching other leaders? How do other leaders deal with this matter? Having other leaders calling them or not agreeing with them.
Okay. So outright, I can say that I don't mind swimming upstream, even though it's difficult. Now, your question is, what does that look like, and what does it mean? I was actually thinking of writing a book calling it "Swimming Upstream" for leaders. It's kind of the type of leader you want to be. I think first of all there are consequences for doing that. So, if my target is to world domination and trying to acquire anything I can at all costs because that's the primary value, I think then I'm not swimming upstream. So, but unfortunately, what I find is that the moment people earn power and have that kind of position, they tend to start getting influenced in terms of entitlement, wanting more, breaking the rules, feeling that the law doesn't apply to them, but it applies to everyone else. And there's actually research about this. So there's an emerging big piece of research. I want to I'll send it to you. Basically, it says that automatically the very traits that help you to become a leader, which is related to social intelligence and your the way you interact with people, the understanding, the charm, the connection with other people, automatically once you achieve that power, that power itself starts making you lose those qualities if you're not careful. So maintaining that is actually swimming upstream, even from a nearly natural perspective. So, and we see this, even if you look at global leaders, especially in politics, there is this tendency that because now I am empowered, the rules don't apply to me.
But then if you start losing touch, and what you just mentioned, what's the fun with being a leader? What's the fulfillment?
Because the purpose is not like we're being very nice here, which is good. I mean, that's the whole thing is to give a message of hope and people get a breath of fresh air because cynicism is growing a lot. But in reality, there is the fact that many people look at leadership as a way of acquiring more, getting more for themselves. Power is addictive. We know what big dopamine hits it gives us when we feel that we can exert power over other people. So I think the decision to swim against the current and use that power for a good cause, to be a force for good, is not an automatic decision, and it's not even that natural. So it's something that's, it comes as a decision. And this is why, yes, I am often criticized about it. But in a way, it tells me that I say, okay, good, then I'm still doing it. If people are,
because
Uh-huh.
it's what defines you, and it's what
Exactly,
you
exactly.
consciously.
It's-
it's what you consciously do. So
it's what I want to be known for.
exactly,
Right.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
But obviously there are, yes, of course. I mean, I could have easily made double the money that I've made in my career, even more than double actually, had I not used a certain approach and stuck to certain values. So I think that at some point we need to decide what is driving us. And before going live, we were talking about value about we mentioned this about purpose. We were talking about how purpose drives us. So I think, yes, I think in my opinion, purpose really is an important driver to me. And what I say is, if it wasn't that, I'll just get employed and not go through the hassle of leadership.
Oh, that's true. That's right. And there is research which shows that if money is your purpose, if money is the reason why you get out of bed, in the morning, sooner or later you realize that you've had enough. You have
Enough.
money to get through, and at least to me, what gives me the kick, what gives me the purpose, is okay making a decent return for my family, for my kids, for to invest in their education as my parents have invested in my education, but also in developing people and trying to make a positive impact on the people I meet on a daily basis, whether it's students, whether it's colleagues, and a great sense of satisfaction last April. One of the people I recruited out of university some 12 years ago, 12 years ago, has now become a director.
Oh wow!
Has now made
Okay.
it to director
Within the firm
a
itself.
leader. So
Wow.
a leader, and that gives you a long-lasting sense of
Yes.
accomplishment. Money gives you the sense of buying a nicer car, a nicer boat, or
House.
holidays, a house, whatever. But seeing the impact that you've made on developing a person and reaching that milestone, and hoping that that person will do the same, with other people that he's coaching, then it becomes
It's
a very interesting journey.
and definitely,
to watch, and you would
and
hope
as
that
you said,
people would
there's a lot of research that shows that ultimately contribution and contributing and giving back is one of the most satisfying and fulfilling things that humans can do. But there's still something niggling inside me. It's like I'm hearing people in my head. I'm not, I'm hearing the listeners in my head saying, I don't know. My experience of training and coaching is that there are so many people who feel that they are managed and led by assholes, and that don't care about them at all, and that I can't help feeling this cynicism coming from people saying that we're being, really. I think we're being genuine in this, but I think there's a big challenge out there of convincing people that what we're saying, that we really believe in what we're saying, and that we really live what we're saying. Not perfectly, because we make mistakes. I don't know how
No,
how can we
I can
reverse
only
this?
share. I can only share my
Yes.
personal story, of course. So I can't. I hear what you say. That listeners might be doubting that, but I can share my personal story. So, um, I've had people. I have people in my team working directly with me who've been with me, as I said, 12 years, 10, 8 years, so for several years. And that's a long time.
It is.
For Gen Zs
It is a long
8
time.
years is a lifetime.
It is a life.
And
True.
I think if you had to ask them, maybe I can suggest a few names for one of your future podcasts. If you ask them what probably appreciate and what makes them subscribe to my purpose or to our collective purpose is I constantly communicate with them, so I try to have lunch with them. I wouldn't say every day, but very a few times.
But you keep the
I do
relationship
keep it,
alive.
and as far as I
Yes.
can, I just go out of my office and do spend some time with the team, either over lunch or doing social social events and whatever. And I think that is where you start hearing more, about the small talk, and you can detect flight risk
Yeah.
Exactly. Earlier and in good time for you to address it. So I think the worst thing that you can do as a leader probably is what you mentioned earlier, which is seclude yourself
Yes.
in your office, and because then it becomes even lonelier and lonelier, and and it's actually a tightening circle, because then people stop subscribing, stop following you, and they start. There's plenty of other opportunities out there today, and then you have to recruit more people, because of course there's a limit on what you can do single-handedly, and it gets worse and worse.
It's interesting because you're reminding me of something that keeps happening to me when I give when there's feedback to leaders, sometimes leadership teams, and that feedback is negative because they would have lost touch with the people. The reaction is how ungrateful. Honestly, I hear this a lot. They say, how ungrateful is this the thank you get for all the sacrifice I make for them? And maybe it's true that they are doing sacrifices. Maybe it's true they are working extra long hours. But if you're isolating yourself in your ivory tower called your office and not keeping in touch with your people, you develop even more areas that you're not aware of, and it can happen. But I get this a lot. The reaction would be, how ungrateful. Now, how dare they say that about me when I do so much for them? So there's a disconnect somewhere. Somewhere there's a disconnect. I don't know. Do you see this happening to? Okay, you can't talk about your colleagues, but in general, like do you see the risk and the potential of this happening, that people really isolate themselves and then get resentful because they're not appreciated?
No, of course, I have observed this in practice, and probably that has also contributed to me, not making sure I don't fall
Yes.
in that trap, because as we said earlier, leadership is already very lonely at the top. But if then you consciously decide to close yourself in your ivory tower, and losing touch, with what's going on the shop floor, so to speak, that makes things even worse, because then people will stop relating to you, will not see the human element in you, will not see your vulnerabilities, and especially the Gen Zs. Today's Gen Zs need to have more of that. Need more the
Yes,
human touch.
more contact,
Need
more
contact, more
and more
authenticity,
reassurance as well.
more reassurance,
Mhm.
more instant feedback.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's not something that you can do
Yeah.
unless you are truly and genuinely in touch with your people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Couple of years ago, I was walking down the corridor with the CEO of a very large hotel chain. Let's put it. I will mention obviously. And one of the housekeeping stuff passed by, and he told her good morning, like a nice good morning, and she said good morning. But then he actually stopped her and told her, um, "How's it going?" And she said, "Okay." She was a bit shy, but says, "Is there anything you need?" And she said, "No, no, thank you." And I said, "Okay, great. So have a good day." And my skepticism said, "He's doing this because I'm with him, like he's trying to impress me, how nice he is." And I'm not usually like that, but I got it. It crossed my mind, but I didn't ask him. I asked a few people around it. They told me that's what he does. That's normal. He will never go bust any member, and he knew her name. Now this is like a big.
that's
You
where
know.
I struggle, I have to admit.
Okay, maybe she had just joined, or maybe she had the tag. I don't know.
No, but I even struggle with my kids' names.
But
So
okay,
and
well,
what's worse,
forgive it.
I call my sons. I call my son with using the dog's name.
Yeah, I
So,
do that all the time. So,
so I
I
struggle.
know, but so and so in a way, it is possible. I think it's partly the humility that you were talking about. So, not thinking that because you're in a position of power, you have the right to, ignore people, trample over people, disrespect people. Because obviously there are horror stories as well. One of them I told you before before we met.
Yes, yes.
But yes, it is so it is possible, and I think you are living proof that you can occupy a position of authority with a firm like KPMG Malta, which is no joke. Let's face it, it's one of the big four or five. What is it? Big four, I think. About big five is the personality. That's my area. Holding different positions of responsibility, and yet still, it's like you made it, and yet still you honor those values, which are, I I will insist that by and large they are against the current.
But to be honest, even KPMG's values are very much, or let's say my values are very much aligned with KPMG's values. So integrity, courage, together for better. Those are
Okay,
KPMG's
okay,
values. And if you drill down, so integrity we touched upon already, and
yeah.
courage as well. The together for better.
Mm.
Okay, so together, that points at the
There's
collective
the community.
effort, the community, the common sense of purpose, subscribing to a common vision and a common mission, and for better, no, and not just for our people, for the betterment of our people, but also for the community
Society,
and
exactly.
society, and even for the well-being of leaders and the people that work within the firm. So I don't know. Maybe I was lucky. I was lucky to be working, with a firm that whose values are very much aligned with mine.
It's not only luck. It's not only luck, because there is a tendency that when you work with integrity and treat people with respect, you tend to get it back. So
Yes,
and
that's
this is
very true.
why persevering and not using the one-offs where you get bitten and hurt by it makes you cynical and say that's it, never again. I will never trust again. I will now start, because it's really not worth it. And as I said, you are proof that it is actually possible. And it's not easy. I mean, we've often discussed how big companies, like not just the big four, I'm saying now, like big companies in general, often have a bad reputation of being ruthless and being, only money driven and just like power driven. So to hear this it is a breath of fresh air, right? So um if you had to give, as a seasoned leader, if you had to give one bit of good advice to people who want to aspire to become leaders, um, I mean, there's more than one bit of advice, but what would one important bit of advice be?
I think one piece of advice that I would share, which has guided me, is to set a bit your boundaries, and have those non-negotiable boundaries, because it is very easy to be sucked in, in your daily routine and your responsibilities, and and the organizations. So it's a bit of a funny story to share, but how I control these boundaries is by seeking to spend time with the people I love. So to try always
Okay.
to have that right balance, because otherwise, as I said, it's very easy to be sucked in and to put in more and more hours, and it's a funny fact to share. So since for many years now, my wife and I and my kids have always committed to each other to have Wednesdays,
Ah,
apart from the weekends, but Wednesdays, committed family time.
okay.
So in winter we have movie Wednesdays.
Ah,
In
okay.
winter,
Interesting.
so every Wednesday, okay.
Uh-huh.
Now at times it has to be a Thursday rather than a Wednesday,
Uh-huh.
whatever. But in principle, we have movie Wednesdays in winter, and barbecue Wednesdays in summer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And actually, even although my kids have, the eldest is 21, they're still asking me which movie are we watching tonight, or what are we cooking on the barbecue tonight.
So they look forward to
they
it
look
still.
forward to it. They
Yes.
look forward to it, and I think that is a bit the word of advice, because that helps. Number one, if like me, you find purpose, a great sense of purpose in the people, in serving the people around you,
Yes.
and especially in the development and growth of my kids. I think that helps you to keep focus and your purpose in check, but it also helps your mental sanity,
Yeah.
because it helps you to switch off and share that glass of wine with my wife and do other things. So that is, I think, the piece of advice I would give is, try to set your personal boundary,
Okay. Yeah.
where to sort of draw a bit the line, because it's very easy. Leadership can very easily suck you in.
That's the word you had it. I had it in my mind, getting sucked in, because
And you don't even realize.
I hear this a
and you
lot. You
don't
don't
even-
even.
And in my younger years, before you're still trying to prove yourself. I was putting. I still do at times, but when I was younger, it was sort of, I felt the need to put in more and more hours, and I found that was, impinging a bit on my personal relationships, and then um, sort of the pressure valve which you find in your safe environment, at home, was no longer a pressure valve, because you were building actually more pressure
Exactly.
in that personal space, and you end up losing effectiveness, having more of those rough starts, rough days.
Exactly.
And I think you take your personal, the best version of yourself at the office only if you have that right balance in your personal life as well.
So, okay, so that's really important, and it's good that aspiring leaders hear this. So it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I'll put it out there anyway. Is it possible to make it in today's corporate world without working 60-hour weeks, and because then, what do you think? Is it possible?
I think it's pretty seasonal. So there will be times. There will be times in
So
the corporate world.
it's okay to be prepared to have those
Yes.
intense. I mean, 60-hour weeks. We're talking 12-hour days, right? 8 to 8 or 9 to 9. So it's no joke.
Well, there are days.
There are days.
And days, but I think you get sucked in if that becomes the
norm.
the routine, the norm, rather than the exception. I find myself, at least from my personal point of view, I do put in the effort, I do put in the hours. I find myself, much more effective than maybe I used to be years back when I was just
It was
putting the
just
hours.
all in. Yeah.
But now, as I told you earlier, I'm experimenting a bit with switching off and going offline. My mobile is set to go on sleep mode automatically at 9. So I can then have my
That's
off
some good advice
my
there.
personal
So
time.
you
during
typically
the
wake up early.
I do wake up early.
So
I typically wake up early, and I start my day every day. So waking up my sons still go to school, so I wake them up. I try to get them off in a good mood. I prepare their school lunches every day for the last, I don't know, 18 years or so.
oh wow,
So
okay.
that's part of my job description. It's part of my list of duties at home, and I gladly do it. So
Yes.
so I honestly believe that the first hour of the day shapes your mood and what happens. I'm actually reading a book, The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma.
Yes,
by
yes,
Robin
by Robin
Sharma.
Sharma.
So I'm reading that book now, and I found myself, not that much of a big deal, because I've been doing
Already
this
kind of
already.
that
So
pattern.
I do wake
Yes,
up early,
yes.
5-ish. I need
Yeah.
that quiet time on my own before everyone else wakes up, and then I spend some time with my sons, making their school lunch, helping them to get off in a good mood, play some music in the
Wow.
morning. So I think that helps me
Yes.
to go
To
get
set
off
the
on
tone.
a good start, to set the tone.
Mhm.
So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yes, and it's only possible because of, I guess, the discipline to sleep on time and wake up early. Because if you
Yep.
don't do that, so you're going to be tired all day. So that's something that comes with discipline comes with
but
the
I'm used to it.
you know?
Even when I was going through my PhD process, I used to wake up every day at 4 in the morning. So my PhD time, not also not to impinge too much into my family
Okay.
commitments and whatever. I used to spend a couple of hours every day from 4 in the
4 a.m.
morning,
in the morning.
4 to 6. So that was my daily time window.
That's
That
painful.
was my daily. It was painful, and I have to be honest.
Okay.
I thought of quitting many times,
Yeah.
but as I don't know if I touched
Uh-huh.
upon this point
You
earlier,
persisted.
but I be mindful, be aware of the first time effect.
Exactly.
If you quit once,
Amazing.
whatever it is,
Yeah, it's true.
then
It's
it
true.
becomes easier.
So in fact, when it comes to developing positive habits, like for example, starting to do exercise, they tell you, don't let yourself skip more than once. Like if you skip once, it's like don't give yourself a hard, but because then it's going to become really
Yes.
really easy, and that's I think a bit of good wisdom there. So John, you shared some pretty personal stuff, even a bit. You gave us a bit of a window into your family life and how important it is for you. How would you like to be remembered as a leader?
I think what I would like. I would like to be remembered as that person who made a positive impact on as many people as possible, whether it's students or colleagues. And the reason being is that you did mention earlier, I'm not sure if it's
Legacy.
legacy, and you did mention earlier one of the first psychologists in Malta who left a mark.
Father Alfred
on
Darmanin.
Father Alfred Darmanin. So, of course, what I mean is,
Yeah.
once you leave a positive mark on someone, that someone will keep on carrying that positive mark and potentially, hopefully, transmit it to others. So I'd like to be remembered as that person who made a difference in someone's journey, and that someone takes away
Will
something
make the same,
and will make the same with others. So that is the only thing that I'd love to be remembered
And
for.
that's how the positive legacy lives on, right? From one generation to the other. Because I honestly feel that you mentioned Alfred Darmanin. I carry him in my heart, and I don't know how many times I think of him and sometimes I say, like, how would he have handled a situation like this? Because he was one of my primary mentors, and I will never forget him. Okay. I think we're coming towards the very end. Any final thoughts? Anything you wish to add? I'm giving you the last word.
Okay. So I think any final thoughts or advice would be never forget never forget your journey. Never forget your origins. At least in my case, I come from a working class family, so I wasn't born or meant to be a leader, but
Yeah.
it's something that I developed over time, and it's something I love. And that's why I said earlier, what's the fun of being a leader if you're just in your own clothes, in your, what do you call it, your ivory tower. So I think my word of advice is never forget where you're coming from. Always bear in mind that everyone has a role in society, and at the end of the day, the sun, shines for everyone, and the train, and if it rains, it rains. Well, on me, it rains a bit later because I'm shorter, so it tends to
So it
reach
hits
me.
you harder too.
But
According
it
to
hits
the
me a-
laws of physics,
it
it
hits
hits
me
you
a bit
harder.
later, a split of a second later than the taller people. But joking apart, I think never forget your origins. Never forget where you come from, and always be respectful to others, irrespective of social status or
role,
authority or role or profile or whatever. So that is
Thank you.
what at least I try to also teach to my kids.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been inspiring. You actually challenged me too about the switching off. I think I should try it to switch off, like literally, digital detox. Because I think it should. I'm saying if you can do it, I can do it too. So thank you very much.
You prepare for it. So last year,
yes,
I told you, I went
yes,
on a
yes.
1 week sailing holiday. I gave a heads up to my team,
Yes,
weeks in
yes.
advance. But then, I just went offline for a full week.
So unless
That was
it's
good.
the end of the world, literally, literally, don't go on me. Thank you very much. So we've ended yet another episode of In Good Company. To me, it was a privilege actually to have this discussion. It restored my belief that you can be a leader, you can have power, authority, exercise your the mandates that you're given even at high levels, and yet treat people with respect, maintain integrity, being vulnerable, being honest, being humble enough to admit that we make mistakes, and it's not always, we don't have all the answers and we don't always get it right. To maintain boundaries, to switch off, which is something that definitely I am taking with me. So thank you for listening. As usual, I want to thank Nisja, the producers of this podcast, who practically make it all happen with a lot of patience and a lot of dedication. As we always say, we're all the socials, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on YouTube. And if you can subscribe, we would love that. And I look forward to seeing you for the next episode. And in the meantime, keep good company.